Joomla installation, I think what we need to understand is the Joomla folder structure before we can actually go and make a template, which you can install in Joomla, right? Now, when I say in structure is, where do we put our folder? If I go to C drive, exam, htdocs, htdocs is going to be your, if you're on a server, then that's your root folder, isn't it? That's the place where you're putting your files in. So that's not, so let's say if I have a Joomla installation here, I had college, private college. This is one Joomla installation, isn't it? All the files, when we install Joomla, this is what we have, right? Now, if you look at it, can you see administrator is the name of a folder? Yeah? And I'm going to talk about very few basic things which you probably need to understand as a web designer or a web developer, which tells you that if you are working with a new CMS and you don't know how to go to an administrator screen or what would be the administrator screen, does that make sense? Now, if I look at here is, if I install this folder on any web hosting company, then this is how you install your files, is that right? And index is your main page which comes up when we go to that domain, right? And when, what do we write down on a Joomla website to go to an administrator page? /administrator, right? Now, why do we write /administrator is because the folder name is administrator, right? Within that administrator, we also have an index file which comes up automatically when you access that. What is it doing? Close the window for me. So if I went into htdocs, went into my Joomla installation, and this is what I was saying. If I go to administrator and I have this index page, and that's all how that index page comes up, right? So if you install any new CMS, you're going to work with any new CMS, there will always be a folder which will be like something to do with admin, like WordPress has got a folder called as WP-admin, right? Which obviously is an administrator. And at the same time, I don't know, when we go to certain websites and ask for what CMS it is working through, do you understand? And it fails to find out what CMS, because what has happened is sometimes for security, what people do is they change the name of this folder administrator. If I change the name of this folder administrator, like I call it as, let's say my name. So now if I want to go to that administrator screen, I can't write /administrator, I'll have to write down /deeper to go there. We don't have to change anything in that folder structure. We can move wherever I can move it wherever I want, but then you have to keep it at /something, isn't it? It can't go inside anywhere, because how will you access it? So it will have to go /whatever, but then I can't access /whatever until I know what it is. And it is only for the people who have told, who are in that admin panel would know, because otherwise there could be endless possibilities of putting that folder. So now if I go to So if I go here and just going to start that, make you see the website. It is. So our example is working, and if I say here localhost / London College, I think in few previous exercises you might have used it. Isn't it with your class, I think? That's the Joomla website. It doesn't matter how it looks like, but then that's how. But if now I write this and write administrator, object not found. It's not there. That folder is not there. So you can change that name. But then I've changed the name of that folder and it doesn't. It says it can't find that folder name. That means we just don't, when we are doing this, we will have to go through, is there any association, yeah, which needs to be changed, which we will talk about. The config file needs to have the folder name changed as well. It's not just that changing that folder name and everything will work fine. We need to change that in the config as well. But what I'm trying to say is this is one security measure which people do when they're working with standard CMS. That if they want to change anything that people can't see, or what CMS have you used, or if they want to just make it more secure, that's what they do. They change the name of the administrator default folder itself. Okay. htdoc. Now let's look at the other folders in this. We'll not talk about index here, but this is your config file, which is your website's configuration, right? Remember when we install Joomla, we talk about database server name, do we? And your database name. In that installation screen, we provide the name of the database, and we provide the name of the username and a password with that database. So let's say if you had a Joomla installation which you were working at home and now you want to copy it over the web hosting server, right? You're going to copy whole of this folder to the server. You're going to export your database and import that into the server as well. But one thing additionally which you will have to do is change this configuration file, but do not do it on your local machine. Do it at your remote server directly. Put whatever, copy your file, export your database, does that make sense? And then come back and look at this configuration file and make changes. And so if I open it with Notepad++, it's more neat to see. What is important for you is to change is this London, this is the site details which are going to be the same, which you can change from the front end as well. You don't have to change that in here, right? But what you will have to change is this. Can you see DB type? That is database type, right? Which will more or less remain same. That doesn't need to change. It will remain as MySQL. But what is your host name? What's your username? What's your password? And what's your database name? Is that right? So these four things will have to be changed if you're copying your Joomla installation from a local machine to another web server, or maybe from one server to another, It could be from wherever you are moving. So whenever you're moving, you copy your whole folder from htdocs You export your database and you import. Now, when I say export, how will I know which database is it? You name, whenever Joomla installs, you provided the name of a database, isn't it? So you should know what database name is. All you have to do is go to your PHP admin and PHP my admin. From here, you just have to pick up that database name and export, and then import onto your server. So if I am in here, just go for export. It will give you an SQL file. You go onto your hosting company and you import. Right? So you will have to export your database from here when you're doing a Joomla, when you're exporting your Joomla. Pratap, you want to ask something? Sure. Understood. Yeah. So if you don't change this configuration file, it's difficult because, but again, if you're moving it just from one machine to another, then you won't have to change this because on our local machines, everything would have the same. It is localhost, it is root, there's no password, it's just a database name which is there, isn't it? So from one machine to another machine, you might not have to change this configuration file. You will only have to change it when you move your files from a local machine to a web hosting company, right? Primarily why? Because the username is never root on web server. They always give you a database username, right? And that's all what you change in this file, nothing else. Is that right? This all settings are available once you are able to go to the admin panel. The rest of the information is all changeable through that config. Is that okay? Anybody wants to ask anything? PHP, but this is not PHP. You just MySQL. How do you access your database? No. I know what they're saying. They might have not known. When you go to your local host, how do you access the databases? This is where you go. You go to PHP my admin. It's not PHP. It's your databases main screen, right? So if you go here, it gives you the list of all the databases it is able to manage. So if you click on this, this is one database with these tables in. So yes, you're right. You guys have not done PHP my admin screen first. We can talk about it in more detail later, yeah? Then because if I go back. Okay, now let's go and look at your htdocs folder again. Now, if I leave this folders like this, can you see a folder called as images? Yeah, that's where your website images go. So, you know the one which comes through media manager. So if you want to make a bulk copy of something, or you want to, then you can directly actually use file manager on hosting company and put it here as well. Yeah, because it's a slow process from there to make folders and copy and not be able to change the permissions. Yes. No, the reason is when you change localhost to whatever server name is, when you transfer your files from here to the web server, sometimes localhost will remain localhost, right? Because the website and their database server is also on the same machine, so it remains localhost. Otherwise, they will tell you what server name you need to put, right? For your database name, because usually they have a set prefix in the database. Some web hosting companies have, some doesn't. Some give you a generic, whatever database name you like, you can create it, right? Others create it with the specific word in front. In that case, then you will have to change the name, isn't it? With whatever that prefix is. Do you understand? That's why I said the database name, the username, and the password. 4 things. Whether change or not, it's your duty to check those 4. Database name, database server name, username, password, and the actual database name. Yeah. Now that's your media manager. But here, can you see a folder called as components? Folder called as plugins, modules, and templates. Is that right? So your components, your modules, plugins, and templates. Now these are your 4 default folders which exist in the Joomla main directory. So if you install any template, if you install any plugin or a component, they all go and sit in this, right? But let's look at this file. If I have London College, this is my root folder, isn't it? London College is my root folder. How do I get to templates? How do I write down the path for templates? Are you all comfortable with writing down the path? Do I need to write slash? If you are in this is your folder, right? Then you are saying look for templates, you don't put a slash. That's where you are, right? You never put slash before images folder, do you? When you say img source. You just say images slash, right? Because something is in images folder, right? Slash is a step or a box within a box, right? Now, but you have to realize what is your starting point. My starting point is this, right? So London College computer doesn't know. Does it make sense? This folder doesn't know anything about London College. Do you understand? This folder doesn't know what it's its own name. It can't see itself. So this is where they are. You want to go in templates, you write down templates, that's it, right? But now if you want to go within templates and look for something, it will be templates slash whatever, right? Now if I go in templates, then there are 3 folders, isn't it? So there's templates, now B3, so if I wanted to go there, that's B3 slash, is that right? Yeah. And CSS, right? And this is the file. These are the files. Is that okay? Yeah. Now what is important here is, let's say there is one CSS file here which is layout. I'm just taking an example, right? There is a file called as layout in this. Where is it? It is in B3 in a folder called as CSS. Is that right? This file, layout, is in CSS folder. Is that right? Now, there are 2 options. If you want to link a background, let's say in your template, you want to put a background image. Does that make sense? You want to put any background image in your CSS. Where should it be? Should it be here only? Should it be left here? In the same folder? If it's not in the same folder, let's go and see if there is a folder called as images here. But these images are specific to this specific template, right? But for this CSS to refer to it, what would be the path in that? In a layout, I'm going to open this layout. I'm just going to open this layout file. Let's say there's a body, right? You understand? I want to put a background here, which is background hyphen image. Is that right? And I want to say URL, and I need to specify the name of the image now, right? Now, I cannot write down here Is that right? I can't write images here because where this file is, in that folder, I don't have any subfolder called as images, right? It's in one sub, either from the beginning or from where you are. So usually we start our journey from where we are. Now layout is in CSS, but my images folder is in these three, right? So from CSS, I need to go back to these three. And we go back one step with 2 dots. Right? We go back one step, one folder up. It means one folder up. Right? Then if I'm asking computer to go back one step, that's 2 dots and slash, right? Now wherever it lands, in that place there is a folder called as images, and in that images there is a file lying as called as book.jpg, right? But this is within the template, isn't it? That's within the template folder. But usually when you are you've installed a Joomla template, right, in your Joomla, then you don't really get an access from the front end to this template folder, isn't it? You all upload your images in the images folder, which is your folder, which is at the root, isn't it? So that means I need to go back. How many steps back? From here, I have to go back all the way up to templates, right? So 2 dots will bring me at these three. Then 2 dots brings me to templates. You need to do 2 more dots to come here. And then images. You understand? Because London College has got a folder called as images where all your images are lying, which you are actually able to use through front end. Does that make sense? One is specifically in the template folder, sub-template folder, and the other one is your directories, your website images, right? What I'm trying to say is, when you are hosting anything on your web hosting company, you will be able to access every folder anywhere, right? But the front end will only allow you to go to your site images folder, not the template images folder. So if you're going to upload everything there, then the path should be, you should know how to write down that path. The reason why I'm saying that is because when you were all working with an existing template, you were changing few images and you wanted to bring in your own images, isn't it? So you didn't know how to get that image, write down in that CSS, where is that image? So that is the way you write down. That's how you know how many dots do you need to put to go back. You should know where is that CSS file you are working with. Does that make sense? Right? And if I am in a Joomla folder, it usually tells you, where am I? This is what it shows. This structure you can anyway see when you go to templates and styles, isn't it? It shows you that folder anyways. The CSS folder, it shows you that folder. So you know how many to go back. Does that make sense? You know how many steps to go back. If there are subfolders within CSS, like some CSS folders have got layout, then you know that there are few more steps to go back. Does that make sense? There are few more dots to put back. So that's a journey. That's just how you map your way back. Yeah. It's like you are in this room, you're saying go outside this room. Go outside this room. Go outside that room. That's how the folders are, isn't it? So you're just asking it to go, make it go up one. Yeah. So you can never start a journey from the starting point because you don't know from the hard disk. You don't know server hard disk. So you can't ever start a path from the root. Does that make sense? You will never be able to start the path from the start. You will always have to go back from the way you are. Is that clear? Yeah. The reason why we are talking about this is because when you are going to create your own template as well, you need to know this structure very well. Yeah. Okay. Now let's look at while we are here in these three. We go in these three. Can you see what files are here? Yeah. Now, what files are compulsory? When you are creating a Joomla template, there are going to be 5 files which are compulsory, which need to be there. This folder structure is not important. Does that make sense? This folder structure is not important. It's good. It is suggested that you keep everything in subfolders when you're creating your own Joomla template. But what are important are these files: favicon, index, template preview, template thumbnail. These are your 5 files which you need for sure. Yeah. So you will have to create these files. Favicon again is optional, not needed. But then, sorry, that's not important. The JS string is only if you're using a JavaScript slider or something in your own template. Does that make sense? Yeah. The files will keep on increasing depending on how you're making your Joomla template. They will increase. And that's why I showed you this, because every time you write down, create your Joomla template, if you have a slider, then you will see, I mean, if I pick up any other template which has a slider, they would have probably created a subfolder for slideshow or a slider separately. And there would be JavaScript. It's like if you're going to have a slider, if you're using a JavaScript, there will be a JS file, isn't it? So that file is there. So that, yeah? And your CSS, they have kept their CSS file in this, that's why it's in that folder. But you're going to need your, it's just like if you're making a website in Dreamweaver, what would you have? Index.html page, a CSS file, and your images folder. Is that right? You understand? So if you would have, that would be your CSS would be one file, index.html would be your one file, images would be in images folder. Is that right? But on top of that, there are 3 files which we've created here, which we didn't have. One is called as template preview, template thumbnail, and template details. Right? Template preview is just a picture. Like in your Dreamweaver, once you have the page ready, how it looks, you just take a screenshot, save it as a picture. Does that make sense? Which will be easier for someone to see how the website looks like when it's ready. Does that make sense? So that's just a picture. Template preview is just a picture. Even thumbnail is just a picture. It's a small size. Because it needs to be in the root. Favicon always stays in the root. Yeah. What is a favicon? What is a favicon? Favicon. Yes, but it has to be 16 by 16. And it has to be. You can have it as a JPEG, but it's preferable to have it as an ICO icon type image, right? So, but there are websites. You can actually just go to an online favicon builder. If you just type in Google online favicon builder, what you could do is create your favicon normally in Photoshop. How do you want it? Upload it, and it will create 16 by 16 and convert that into an icon file and give it back to you. Right? Now you would say that why can't I do that myself? It's just that you need a specific software to put it as an icon. Then the format change. Format doesn't change by just changing an extension. I hope you understand by now. I just can't go at the end of a file and just change the extension and expect the format has changed. You have to have a software to convert the format. So that's all. Yeah. So now let's look at now. So template preview is just an image. Template thumbnail is also just a image, which is, and favicon is a icon, or it could be a JPEG. But what is important is this, the XML file, right? And your index. Is that okay? Now let's look at this template detail. I don't want to show you this. I'm going to take you to another folder where it is simplified. Does that make sense? I don't want to show you this one. I'll open this anyway, but just like your HTML tag in your HTML file, XML file has a tag called as XML as a starting, and everything stays in that XML tag. Okay, I don't know, how many of you ever heard about XML? XML follows the same hierarchy structure just as HTML. In fact, HTML is a subset of XML. Does that make sense? It has derived itself from the XHTML, now follows all the rules of an XML. So every document has a root element. Your HTML has a root element called as HTML, so everything stays in HTML, right? So starting in an ending tag. XML, the document starts with an XML tag and finishes with the XML tag, nothing else. On top of that, can you see this difference? These are just tags, isn't it? But it tells what it is defining. If it's an author tag, it is telling me who the author is. If it is telling author email, then it is telling me what author email is. That's how XML is. You can create your own tag. And the name of the tag tells me, inside that tag is what you are actually describing what it is. But you might have, it doesn't have any sub tags here which I can show you. This one. Can you see this file is a parent tag, and it has got a closure, isn't it? But everything, there are further tags in this. Now this tells me, what does this files tags tell me? What files are included in my template? What files are included in my template, and it tells me the name of the folder, and it tells me individual file names, right? You don't have to specify what is in the folder. In your XML, you don't have to explain what is in your subfolder. Is that right? Like here, it just says folder CSS, folder HTML, folder images, folder JavaScript, folder language, right? And then it describes file names, right? Now, what are these file names? These are these file names. Yeah? And the folder was this. What is in that folder, you don't have to tell that in XML. We don't tell. We just name the folder, full stop. Does that make sense? So what we need to do is, so I'm going to go and show you, and I'm going to put that onto the K drive as well. So let me just go here. These are just 3 simple files as a starting point, right? So if the example of this, you can actually, I'm going to give you this to copy. You can use this as a template. Does that make sense? I'm going to give you, these are blank. So you can use this as a template. Is that okay? Now, everything else is written. Can you see? These are your standard things which need to be in your XML file. So they are there. This is where you define your template name. Name, template name. When did you create it? Who's the author? Your email address. Author URL, you can leave it blank if you do not have your web address. Does that make sense? Copyright, if you want to put a copyright message there, you can have that. But this copyright message does not print on the screen. Does that make sense? So this is nothing to do with what goes on the screen. This is just information about your template. Is that right? License, because you are doing it under general public user license. So we leave that statement like that. If you are making a template and you're going to later on make different versions of the same template, you can use this version, right? And description, if you want to write down a one-line description about your template, right? That's your file. Generally, you will have only these, not much, but if you have more, you expand this. So I've only listed your basic files here. Is that right? Is that okay? You might not put your CSS in a folder. If you do that, then you just say file name and your CSS file name as well. Yeah? You know, if you don't put your CSS file in a CSS folder, then it will be here, isn't it? And then that folder wouldn't be there. Yeah? then it will be file name design.css, let's say. Yep. So now positions are what we're going to talk about, and that's it. Extension, that's the basic template XML file. All I am doing is telling what my basic information about my who has created that template, what files are there, and what positions are there. Is that okay? Yep. And we'll create these positions. We will talk about these positions in a minute. But you have to name them, isn't it? In your this, you have to give names to specific places, and then you come back and write them here. If you write them here, only then they will be available in that drop down to be able to choose. Otherwise, they won't be. Is that okay? Right? Now, what is important is this. Now, I haven't written down anything in. This is a blank index, and there is a Joomla code. Just to explain you what that is. And what I've done is, here you have what goes in head, what goes for module, and what goes for a component. Right? Three sections which we need to learn to repeat. Is that okay? Yeah? It's called code, Joomla codes. TXT, no, we're going to copy while we are creating, while we have a standard index file, this is the code we will have to copy. So this is the reason I've put it like this. Yeah. Now, this one, let me just bring up this page as a browser. Run. This area would be there. This is an example of but I know why it's not showing up the way it needs to show up, because we've already applied the let's change all this. How do you link your CSS? Link type. I'm just going to write down few words here so that you know. So that's your page at the moment, right? Does it make sense? But if I have my, I'm going to open this page in Dreamweaver, and then we're going to go from there. So let's open this page in Dreamweaver. Yeah, if that's your page, and if you have various areas here, like let's say if you had your, if you're creating a normal website, these are just different divs which you've created. Is that right? Now you decide where does your navigation go. Which div was your navigation supposed to go? You decided a layout, isn't it? You've chosen where your navigation goes. Is that right? Yeah. This is not, if this is the fixed part of your template, then that's how it will be, isn't it? If that's a fixed part of your template, that's how it will be. But where are your rest of the divs on your page? So you decide what are your, you've created a CSS with divs and IDs, is that right? Now you need to tell me which areas in your page are fixed or the main content. Remember we said that if I'm going to have 5 pages or 6 pages, there's going to be main section of my page which has got the content. Is that right? So now that needs to be identified. Now this is a footer here. Yeah. So if I look at this structure, there is just one, there's a wrapper. Yeah. There is a wrapper, there is a left, and then there is right, and then there is a footer. There are just only 3 sections, left, right, and footer. Is there any, there's a foot, within your left there is another div called as copyright. In your right you've got a navigation and you've got content as your div. Is that right? Now I can create more divs if I like. Can I? Yeah. What is your template's layout? No, this is this. But let's say if you were making your own template, what I'm trying to say is, look, if you have different layouts, if you're saying this is the header, that's your navigation, that's your header, that's just a top bit you've left, is that right? That's going to be your footer. Is that right? Now, if this is your content, that is your content main whole thing, or your content has got 1, 2, 3. What does your, if your content is going to go to middle, then what is this for? Now you're saying this is a place I want to create. If somebody wants to fit anything at the side, they can fit. But my main content goes in here. Is that right? So then what I'll be saying is, this is one div. This is another div. That's one, right? So that's your L. That's your R. I mean, I'm not taking this example. That's your content. That's your footer. Now, just because you know Joomla now, whatever person can put in at these places, right? Right? Do you want a place here that you want him to put anything? You want him to put something here? If he doesn't use, it doesn't use. Does it make sense? But if he wants to, can he put anything here? Do you understand the point? Remember, because whatever we are saying, where the person will be allowed to put in, those we will have to convert them, and we are going to write down that those are modules. He can put those modules wherever he likes, and that are the positions I need. Do you understand? Whatever your page contains, the articles will always go here. They cannot go here, they can't go here, they can't go here. Is that right? Your articles will only go in this place. Yeah? But these places are what you're saying, that a user can place whatever he likes. Do you understand? Your navigation, this area is also, because he can choose menu to be here, he can choose menu to be here. So that's not necessary that it's going to be there. Header, it can be fixed, or you can allow him to put things in header if you like, and the topic. Is that right? So what I'm trying to say is, you need to know, you should have identified on your div structure what's going to remain fixed and what are the areas you're going to allow where the modules can go if the user wants it to. Does that make sense? Yeah. Once you've identified, that is what the change we need to make here. All we need to do is the code which I've given to you in that file. That's just fixed. That doesn't change. You just copy that at all that places. You copy one code in your main point, which is your component. That's a code for the component, right? The modules, everywhere you want somebody to write a module, you put that everywhere. Does that make sense? Because I don't know whether any module will be here or not. It will only depend on the chosen position, right? So what is that code? The code I was showing you earlier. Not this one. This one. The one which I was. These ones, can you see module code here? This line will be repeated in every div you want a person to be used as a module. In your HTML, we will pick up your HTML and we copy this line everywhere. On every div, you're saying it can go in, right? Because what this line does, it says include type modules, name, less. Now this name will change. Does that make sense? The name is your position. Sorry? I am. I mean, it's not connected through this. That's just to charge. There's a key to plug in. It's still plugged in. Yeah. Name. That's why I love it, because if I have to get up and I have to talk, then otherwise if I take this one, it's just like a wire trailing behind me. No, but can you see this? This is type modules, right? Name is what we're going to change, and these are going to be called my positions. These are what we're going to call as positions. But we need to repeat them at all. This code needs to be repeated in your index page wherever you think a module can go in. That's what makes it a position. And because this is a generic code which Joomla writes, and it's like it picks up if the module has a position, it will fix it here. Yeah? And look, this is for your component. This only goes in the page once. This code only goes into your page once, and that's your main content where it goes in. And wherever it necessarily doesn't have to be a middle bit. If you've not given any sidebar, you know that you will not have, your template has not given any sidebar. Does that make sense? Yeah? So you have this code goes into your main section. This code gets repeated as many as time. And now this, you don't actually have to write this code into your page like this. This is only if you want to use the Joomla's standard CSS, you know, like print one, the standard CSS. Then you can copy this whole code into your head section to link to all the generic CSS. Does that make sense? Sorry? you want to put that in only if you want to use a system CSS or a general, otherwise you don't, because you have your own CSS, you don't have to put this. But sometimes what happens is that you want to take care of general settings which your template is not taking care of, then you are linking it with Joomla's generic CSS anyways. That's what this line would do. In its templates, there's a folder called as system. That's a generic folder in Joomla. So all this line is doing is what? Is just making sure that we have linked with generic CSS. But what I'm saying is that is not necessary. That is only if you want to. All I would need is a link tag with my CSS on the page, which is already linked, isn't it? Why would I want to use them? I only want to use system if I've not taken care of something. If my template is wholesome and complete, I don't want that to be overwritten in the first place by Joomla CSS. Only if you are not sure, only if you think you've not taken care of all the typography, you've not taken care of all the margins and all that, you really don't know, you just want Joomla to take care of that. That's when we link to CSS. Is that okay? You can always link this, and you can always go back once you've transferred this template into your Joomla, you can always go back and paste that as well. Doesn't matter. Later on. Go on. Pratap, you wanted to say something. Yeah, this is what we are having it as a backup, like as a default. But this is not default. Default is the template I have, a CSS I have, isn't it? You are making a template, but what I'm saying is these are generic settings. Does that make sense? Okay, you don't know what these are. I'll show you 1 minute. Just look. If I go here, if I go back to File, open new window, we were in C drive, exam, htdocs. London College, and if I go template. Now look, this is the name of a template, that's the name of the template, but this is not the name of the template, right? But it still has certain CSS and files in it. So this is just, so if the system was offline, how the message is coming, where that box is being placed, that's why. Because otherwise you are saying that you have taken care of, your template has taken care of any screen that can come up. That is what this would do. That's the reason. System is like system errors, some errors come up, your page is not working, or there's a file not found. So what is a file not found template? What template do you want it to be picked up then? So that's what it does. These are error files, and can you see offline, error? So these are the templates which they are using. But what I'm saying is you don't have to link to these templates. You don't have to embed these CSS in your template. It's a good point to make that reference until unless you start making templates which are complete and full. So that, yeah. Oh, you can go in and have a look. You can always open. If there is a class called as button, we might not even have them. Does that make sense? We are not going to use these classes. But now, like, this is tooltip. Now, wherever the computer system generates a tooltip, this is where it's going to use that. These are captions, like we have not built in a class called as captions, but then in your article you can actually choose that image can have a caption, isn't it? So that's what I'm saying. There's some basic styling which has already been done for almost everything. They've considered and thought through everything which comes up on the page. So there's a CSS for that. Obviously you can change it. I'm not saying you can't change the CSS. Yeah. So, this is the reason I said you don't have to link to this CSS. That is not at all important. You don't have to put this code into your page. That is only relevant. This is only needed if you want to link to that CSS, otherwise not. Yeah. Otherwise, you only need this code, one line from here, and these two lines from here. Yeah. But what is important is how many times have you quoted this and what have you called that position? That is what I need for my XML file. If you create a position in your index page but do not define it in your XML, they will not work. Whatever the names, because you are going to repeat this, isn't it? You're going to put this in different places. So what I'm trying to say is that how many times did you repeat and what names did you give here? You should know the list of those names, and those names have to be exactly written down in your XML file. Yeah. Yeah. So what we're going to do now is, this is a line, this is the code we have. Should we create this? Should we complete this? Yeah, but what I want is, can you all create a basic structure of your own, and then I show you where this line goes, and then we import, finally obviously you complete that, and then you import that in your Joomla. I just want you to create a simple CSS and your HTML page, isn't it? With whatever colors. You can have different colors, and does it make sense, just to see whether that is how it comes out. But do you want to take a break before that? Yeah. I'm surprised not many people are here. Okay, close that.